All right. Stop. And okay. We made it to step 4. Okay. Developing a strategy for dealing with temptation. Okay. So all the things that we've looked at up to this point, steps 1, 2, and 3, are all going to come together here with saying we realize there's a reality of sin in our lives. We realize we struggle with certain temptations. And, you know, if we've gotten to the point where we're saying, okay, I do want to change. I do want to get rid of these things. Well, now we're going to look at kind of a more practical reality. Well, how do we do it? Okay? What are we going to do to confront the temptations? What are we going to do to, you know, break that cycle of sin? Okay? So, how to change your mind. Okay? These are some of the things that we're going to look at in this step. We're going to look at understanding the human psychology of it. We're going to identify what needs to be changed. We're going to provide alternatives to behaviors or ways of thinking. And we're going to arm yourself with every tool at your disposal. And we're going to look at training yourselves in new habits and new thoughts. Perfect practice makes perfect. Okay? So, understanding the psychology of addiction and habits. Okay. Like I said in the beginning, one of the things that we're looking at is not just the fact that temptation is a spiritual struggle. It's that mind, body, and soul. And the reality is that our minds and bodies play a factor into the reality of our temptations, okay? And so, a quick look at a little bit of brain chemistry, okay? Whether you realize this or not, but every brain has its own little pharmacy, okay? And it's able to deliver certain drugs, okay? And it does so based on certain realities. It's going to give us these things and it's going to have different effects on us, okay? And so the reality is that these are different chemicals that the brain can release when certain things happen, okay? So dopamine is a reward chemical. It makes us feel good for reward, you know, when we do something, accomplish something, and you get that good feeling about it, that's that dopamine kicking in. It's like, ooh, I'm pretty happy. I did this, whatever it was, okay? And stuff. And so, have up here Candy Crush and other addictive games and stuff. The designer of those app games tap into this, okay? Because they know that if they can create a game that delivers some dopamine, you're going to keep playing it and stuff. So I've never played Candy Crush, but I've seen people on screens tapping and squishing candy pieces, okay? And I understand you kind of clear the screen, right? Something like that. So, you know, when you clear a screen, you get a little bit of dopamine because it's like, oh, I did it. I feel good. But, oh, I got a 20 combination, whatever it might be. It's, you know, it makes you feel good. It on the screen, it probably explodes and makes noises and stuff, you know, because it's going to want to make you feel like you should be rewarded for what you just accomplished. And the designers of these games do that on purpose because what happens when you clear a screen? A new screen comes up, and you're going to want to keep playing. And that's what they want. They want you to keep playing. They want you to keep playing. And, you know, so long as it can basically gear your brain to give you those little pops of dopamine, you want to keep playing. Because it's like, you know, every time I play this game, I feel great, you know. It makes me feel good to clear those screens. It makes me feel good to squish those little things, whatever, and stuff. So, you know, that's how the brain works. Now, one of the things to understand with this brain chemistry and all of these things, the brain doesn't ask the question whether it's a good or bad thing, okay? It just knows that under certain conditions, it's going to deliver these chemicals to you. Okay? And so it doesn't ask, should you be playing Candy Crush? Okay? The brain doesn't ask that. It just knows that when those little bells go off and the screen flashes, you did something good, it's giving you some dopamine. Okay? And it doesn't ask why. Okay? Serotonin. This is a chemical that comes from self-esteem. And so things that basically make you feel good about yourself, okay, you know, it's going to release that serotonin, okay? And I have up here, you know, feeling important and control and charge, you know, those can all be things that will give you that serotonin. Of course, there's the danger, though, that these things can lead to pride, envy, and resentment. So, okay? Because if you're doing something, let's say you're at work, and, you get an attaboy from the boss, and, that makes you feel good. You get a little bit of that serotonin. So, well, then, that person in the next cubicle, well, they get an attaboy, and you didn't get one. Now you're like, well, that's what can happen, is that, we want those feelings, and we want those things. So while they're good, and it's a natural reality, it's not something we'll ever get rid of. So this isn't something I'm saying, figure a way to get rid of serotonin in your life. No. I mean, it's a good thing that the brain does that for us, okay? But we have to realize that these things can work against us in the whole habits and temptations and all those kind of things, okay? This next one, I always pronounce it wrong. Oxytocin. This is a bonding relationship one. Out of our loving relationships and those things like that. Those experiences will give us that particular chemical. Now the thing with this is that you see in parentheses here I have a need for intimacy can lead to a lot of sexual sins, because if someone is not having good relationships and bonding and stuff, then that's where those temptations to seek it in just a sexual experience, whether that's through things like pornography or just multiple sexual partners, just trying to have whatever intimacy they can have on a physical level, that can, take what would be normally a good thing. If you have good relationships, good bonding, good loving relationships, you can get that in a good way, but it can also lead to some bad behaviors, because the desire for that, the need for that, can move us to trying to just get it any way you can, okay? And stuff. Endorphin, okay? This is a pain-killing chemical. If anyone has ever been a runner, you might be familiar with what they call a runner's high, which is, when you're running long distances, after a while, things start to ache and, and everything. And so, but you can get to a point where all of a sudden, like, all that pain disappears, okay? That's because the body's kicked in endorphins. It's sending you some pain-killing things, and so, you get into what they call the runner's high, and it's like, oh my goodness, I thought I was going to stop at 2 miles, but now I can go for 5 or 6 because I just don't feel the pain, okay? And that's, that's what endorphins does. Now, the thing of it is that, once again, because the brain doesn't determine, the right or wrong of these, it just does it under certain conditions, is that there's the risk or danger that, a person gets into self-destructive behaviors in order to try to get those endorphins. And so they do things that are damaging to themselves physically, maybe, so that they can get an endorphin to make them feel better. And so this might be, to some degree, there's all kinds of psychological reasons why people cut and stuff, but there's a certain reality there. If you have pain and the body seeks to put the pain down, you get endorphins. Okay? And so you can, get caught up in something that's self-destructive because you say, well, I know this hurts, but then I feel better. Okay? And that's because the body's trying to compensate for the pain. Okay? Last one is adrenaline. This is that pure energy. Adrenaline comes from our that fight or flight reality in us, that when we're put in a risky or dangerous situation, we get this surge of energy. And that gives us the energy to flight, run away if we have to, or stand our ground and fight if we have to. And that's a good thing. We want to be able to have adrenaline, especially in dangerous circumstances. Okay. However, a desire for that rush, a desire for that adrenaline can move into risky behaviors. Okay. Not just things like skydiving, things like that, but things like cheating or breaking the law and stuff. Part of someone cheating on their spouse. They might be caught up in the adrenaline because they're doing something that's dangerous, something risky. They know that what is at stake if they get caught. And so that can be an added element to that temptation that, this is giving them this surge or rush because they're taking this huge chance by doing this. Okay, so, once again, these chemicals don't necessarily make us commit any sins, but they can add fuel to the fire, so to speak. They can, give us something in a way that makes that sin all that more attractive. Okay? And so that's basic brain chemistry. Okay? understanding another thing, okay, about addictions and habits, okay? Habits are formed by repetition, whether they're good habits or bad habits, okay? If we do something continuously, okay, we'll build a habit of it, okay? You know, the brain likes to form predictable patterns. You know, it likes to form habits, okay? It wants to know what's going to happen next, basically. It wants to know that, you know, if I do the following things, these are what I'm going to do. It's going to go A, B, C, D, E. You know, that brain likes to do that, okay? And so whenever it can determine a pattern, it starts to basically make connections work so that it's like, okay, everything's flowing in this direction, let's make it go in this direction, okay? And so, you know, that's what the brain does. And once again, just like with the chemicals, okay, when you're forming a habit, the brain doesn't ask whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. It just knows that you've done this 100 times. Okay, this is something that you do, and from now on it knows that this is a part of, you know, the pattern. Okay, it sets that up. And so one of the things that we want to do, okay, in our strategies is we want to go from a superhighway to a dirt trail, and from a dirt trail to a superhighway. Okay? Because if we're going to change habits, okay, one of the things you have to do is you have to substitute. You can't just say, I'm going to stop doing the following thing. You know, you have to have something else, a new habit. Okay? Because basically, if you have a habit, the brain has created a superhighway, 6 lanes all going in one direction. And so that's where it's going to want to take you. Okay? And the only way to overcome that is to essentially stop the repetition. Stop repeating. Stop doing whatever it is you're doing that forms that superhighway. Okay? And start something new. When you start something new, it's not going to be as big as a superhighway. You're going to start with a dirt trail, okay? But what we want is to reduce the usage of that superhighway that you form the bad habit and make it turn into a dirt trail that's never used, okay? We want that to be the forgotten road. And at the same time, we're going to turn that dirt trail, that new habit, into a superhighway. We want the brain to go there, not to go to the bad habit, okay? And so that's one of the things we have to do, because what is the brain trying to do? It's trying to form a pattern, trying to form, you know, a recognizable, this is what we should be doing. And so just like a bad habit can form and create that superhighway, well, we can counter it with the same reason why it formed it to begin with. We create a new highway, okay? A new road to be on, and we stop using the old one. And so that's how we have to break that cycle of habit. You have to create a new habit to take that superhighway to a dirt trail, and a dirt trail to a superhighway. Okay? Your personal strategy. Okay? We're bringing everything together now. Okay? We need to identify what needs to change. So, what are the triggers? What are your excuses? What are the habits? Okay? What are you tempted to do, or what attitudes need changing? Okay? First step is to acknowledge the sin. Okay? Realize that there are certain things that I'm attracted to. You know, they may be wrong, but I'm attracted to them. That's my temptation. Okay? We need to recognize that. And in that, like I said, we talked about it in the other steps. What are those triggers? What are the conditions that make those temptations pop to your mind? You know, and it could be all kinds of things, because if it's a habitual sin, maybe you've got it in the habit that once a week you do something, or once every month you do something, and so the brain by the 21st is expecting that this is what's going to happen. That superhighway has been formed, and it's like, okay, you're on time for this. Now it's time to go do this. Okay? And so whatever it is, whatever the triggers are, what were those excuses? What excuses do you have to do the sin? Okay? Have to identify those. Okay? What habits do you have that, create that sin? attitudes, okay? Because we talked about, you know, not just the direct sins, but, you know, sins of omission, when I'm not loving someone in the way I'm supposed to, okay? So, you know, somebody hurt me whenever, and, you know, I've X'd them out of my life, okay? They hurt me, they broke my, you know, they broke my heart, they made me feel bad, whatever, and so I don't want to love them, okay? That's an attitude that needs to be changed, okay? You may not have any direct contact with the person anymore because this maybe happened years ago, and you've kind of X'd them out of your life. But if you're not loving someone, that's an attitude that needs to be changed. You need to look at that and say, you know, and the same thing for pride. You know, what are my excuses not to love this person? You know, what am I doing? Why am I harboring this? What, you know, am I not ready to let go? You know, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Are you going to be willing to cut that out? That resentment, that unforgiveness, whatever it might be. Can you let go of that? Okay? So you have to identify these things. Okay? And we have to face it and replace it. Okay? You know, in the gospel, we just had this not too long ago, beginning of Lent, this passage. And Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit for 40 days in the wilderness, tempted by the devil. And he ate nothing in those days, and when they were ended, he was hungry. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become bread." And Jesus answered him, "It is written, man should not live by bread alone." Okay? Jesus confronted that temptation. And it's a temptation that's coming not just on a spiritual level, but on a physical level. It says he's hungry. Okay? He knows he's hungry. He would want to have a piece of bread at this point. Okay? But he's not allowing the devil to use his half-truth. You know, he's not allowing the devil to trick him into saying, "Oh yeah, well, I'm hungry. This would be an excuse. This would be an exception to the rule, so I'll go ahead and do this." And so he takes it to a higher level. He says, man should not live by bread alone. You know, he counters a half-truth with a full truth. That says, yes, I'm hungry, and I can acknowledge that, but there's something greater than just feeding the body. Okay? And so that's one of the things that we have to do ourselves is, you know, we have to face the temptations. That's what I said way back in the beginning, when we have to admit there's certain things we want to do that are sinful. Okay? We have to face it. You know, if we lie to ourselves, if we pretend that, no, that's not me, well, you're never going to be able to deal with it. You're never be able to overcome it because you're not allowing yourself to confront it. Okay? Okay. Alternatives to sins and temptations. Changing our mind about sin. Set in your mind that you want to change your mind about a sin. Tell yourself, tell God, and when the temptation comes, pray to change your mind. Okay? This is very simple. Okay? You know, but sometimes it's the simple things that elude us. Okay? The reality is that when temptations come, where are they going to come? They come into our mind first, right? You know, we're going to recognize that, oh, I'm starting to feel like I want whatever, fill in the blank. You know, or, you know, if it's one of those kind of things like a resentment towards someone, something that sparks that memory of that person. You know, you see an article about them or see a picture, oh, well, you know, remember, I don't like that person. You know, whatever it is. You know, when we're confronted, one of the first things we have to do is know that this is my temptation. This is one of those things, you know, and I have to change my mind. I can't think the way that I was thinking before, that I want this sin, that I want to hold this resentment, that I want whatever, you know, fill in the blank. You know, we have to say right then and there, when we become aware that that temptation is coming at us, we have to say, look, I know what that is, and I'm changing my mind. I don't want what that is. Okay? And so we tell ourselves, we tell God, ask God, you know, help me change my mind. You know, I don't want this as a part of my life. Okay? Create a list of responses to your temptations. When you're tempted, okay, remember the video, a little discussion going on, okay? Right, wrong, why it's okay, what are the excuses, the half-truths, the rationalizations, all those kind of things, okay? Well, think about your temptations. Think about when you have fallen for those temptations. What arguments are being presented to you, okay? What comes with that temptation? What excuses? What is that voice in your head telling you to make it okay? The more you know that, the better you can arm yourself, okay? And have an answer. The answer can't be, well, that's just a sin. You know that's not enough, okay? You have to have good answers, you know? And so we need to think about it. Why don't I want this in my life anymore? What would this sin bring? I mean, think about it. When we're tempted to something, at the moment, it may feel like this is exactly what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And so we often don't think, well, what's the repercussion? What could happen? What will happen? How does this affect me? How does this affect my relationship with God or someone else? What's the repercussion of this sin? We need to think about that. We need to do it before the temptation. Okay? This is done before we're tempted. Make a list. Think about it. Think about, if I do this sin, what's the repercussion? How will I feel? How will that affect my relationships? When I talked about there's no such thing as a harmless sin, there's repercussions to sins. It damages people. It hurts people. It hurts the world. And so we need to think about that. We need to know that ahead of time. Because if we're only waiting for the moment of temptation, it's too late. We're going into the fight unarmed. And so we need to do this ahead of time. Have good answers. Make a list. You can train yourself to respond to temptations so that you will want something else instead. Okay? You have to train yourself. This requires work. Okay? If you play tennis, golf, any sport, okay? We have a tennis player here? Okay. If, when you first learn to play tennis, you learn to swing it wrong, so you never get the ball where you want it to go, what do you have to do?
Practice.
You have to change your swing though, right? You have to learn to swing it right. And once you learn the right way to swing it, then you have to practice it, right? And keep doing it until that's the way you swing, and not the old way. When I was doing my police training way back when, before I was a priest, I had a shooting instructor, and he would tell us that in order to get something locked into our muscle memory, you had to do it 100 times in a row, okay? And so we would stand there at the line and we would practice drawing the gun so it would come straight to our eye level so that we'd be ready to shoot. And we had to do it over and over and over and over again because he said take 100 times to lock it into your muscle memory. It requires the repetition. You have to train your body. You have to train so that it's no longer a thought process, that automatically you're going to go boom, right to the right position and you never have to think about it because that's what you're going to do. Same thing, okay, applies. You have to train yourself to confront the temptations in the right way, okay? And a lot of what we're doing and planning in our strategy is to do before we ever get to a temptation, okay? We're doing this in our day-to-day prayer life so that when that temptation comes our way, we're ready for it, okay? We need to do this. We have the examination of conscience, okay? We do that before we go to confession. We look at the list and remind ourselves, look, that's one I need to confess, that's one I need to confess, I broke, did that, okay? And that's great. We need that, okay? But we also need to take it a couple steps back, okay? We need to say, okay, what is leading me into these situations? How am I getting there to that point of temptation? And how do I stop? How do I confront it before I ever get to that moment, okay? alternatives to sin and temptation. You need to have something else to choose, think about, do, or feel. Okay? So as I said with the habit, the superhighway to a dirt trail and a dirt trail to a superhighway. You have to have something else to go to. Whatever the temptation might be, you have to know what it is that you're going to. Because if you don't have an alternative, you only have one choice. If you only have one choice, what are you going to do? You're going to take it. So if you're on that superhighway and it's leading you to a particular sin, that's where you're going. Unless you have an off-ramp to get onto and a different road to get on, you're going to head right to it. Okay? And so we need to have alternatives for any sin or attitude, whatever it might be. Okay? Whatever disposition is leading us away from that perfect love that we're all called to. Say, okay, if certain things cause me to think in a particular way, I have to start training and disciplining myself to think a different way. Okay? And if there are certain triggers, okay, when I see so-and-so on TV, it just makes me fill in the blank. Okay? Well, if that's the case, then you need to think about that. Well, what can I do? Okay? What adjustments to my attitude, my thoughts, my feelings can I make so that that's not my response? Okay? Another thing to consider is also, if you can't avoid the temptation, can you avoid the opportunity for sin? Okay? Can you take yourself out of the equation? Sometimes the reality of temptation is unavoidable. We're in a circumstance or situation where, it's going to happen, and we're going to be confronted with it. Okay? But can we make sure that we make it impossible, essentially, for us to actually do what we're tempted to do? Okay? And so, using the internet, again, as an example of something, the internet's causing me to sin, and, I've got to use it for certain things and stuff. Well, can I create the circumstances, whether it's through, filters, or whether it's making sure that, someone is always present when I'm using it, or whatever stuff, that prevents me from going in the wrong place? Okay? Can I make sure that I don't give myself the opportunity? I might be tempted to it, and I might be tempted so much that I know that if I had the opportunity, I would probably do it. Well, then get rid of the opportunity. Make sure you can't do it. In the classic, kind of affair scenario where, somebody at work is, flirting with somebody, whatever and stuff, and, okay, now there's this big business trip going and stuff. But what? Don't go alone. If you're married, bring your spouse. Buy her ticket. Make sure that bedroom is occupied. No opportunity. Okay? Remove the opportunity if you can't avoid the temptation. It's simple and practical, but it can work. Okay? Beware of traps. Okay? You must train and discipline yourself to do things the right way. Another thing that my shooting instructor always said was that perfect practice makes perfect. It's not just practice, because if you're practicing the wrong way, you're just learning bad habits. Okay, so you have to do it correctly every time you're trying to build that habit, okay? And stuff. And we've covered this one before, but it's worth saying one last time. That's a trap, okay? There's no such thing. That's equals never quitting, okay? Also, if your goal is to never do it again, will you achieve your goal? When do you achieve that goal? I'm going to never do it again. You never get there because the goal is never, right? We have to understand that, okay? While we may want to never do it again, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't, we should, okay? But realize that we don't want to make the goal never, okay? At least not the only goal, okay? We want to work towards never by making the goals attainable. Set small goals, like I will not do it tonight, I will not do it today, okay? Because that way we can actually achieve it. Because if you're on a journey to eternity, saying, I'm never going to do it again, that can exhaust you, and you feel like, well, I'm never getting anywhere with this. And that can create the give up, you know. It's like, you know, but, you know, if you set goals, smaller goals, you can feel that, yes, I'm working towards this reality where I never want to do it again, you know. And just, you know, to borrow from, you know, AA, they do that, you know. Okay, prayers. It's always a good idea to be praying. That's always a good way to protect ourselves and help strengthen us against sins. But when we're talking about an actual moment of temptation, what we want is something short. Keep it short, easy to recall. You know, you can use things like the Psalms, not the whole Psalms, but maybe just a part of a Psalm, or like from the Mash, we have the responsorial Psalms, those phrases that we do in response. So from the last 2 weeks, we had be with me, Lord, when I'm in trouble, or last week was the Lord is my light, my salvation. Simple, easy to remember words. And so, you know, you're going down that highway towards the temptation, towards the sin, and you realize it, you'll instantly hit the brakes. You hit the brakes by just inserting those words of praise, words of prayer. And that's all you need to do. You don't have to do something big, something long. You don't have to do a whole rosary. Just get the words of God into your head, into your mind. To change your mind about that particular temptation or that sin. And so you can do that very easily with just a simple short phrase. You know, the Lord is my light and my salvation. You know, you can use holy words or phrases. Things like, pray for us sinners. Forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass. And that's a really good one. If we're having troubles forgiving someone, that's our sin, our failure to love. Then we might want to look at just that part. That's from the Our Father. But if we're in a moment of temptation, we see that person that we don't like or we have a grudge against and stuff, you know, we don't need to say the whole Our Father. Just focus on those words. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Keep it short, keep it simple, because what we want to do is hit the brakes. If you're heading towards a temptation and sin, you want to hit the brakes. Stop yourself from going any further, closer to that sin. And so, like I said, those words you can look at, God come to my assistance, come Lord Jesus, shepherd me, O God, God give me patience. I had a 6th grade teacher who was always saying that. She'd be in the middle class, we'd be doing something, she'd say, God give me patience, God give me patience. You know what? I actually think it helped, okay? I do think it stopped her from doing things that she probably didn't want to do, okay? And so, we also have scripture quotes, okay? One we just used, we looked at Jesus' answer to the devil. One does not live by bread alone. We can also look at this passage here, okay? This is from Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 13. This is St. Paul's description of love. This particular passage is one that we should take to heart. It should be part of our daily prayer. If we really want to stop sinning, which if we said already is not loving, then we need to know what love is. We should take this to prayer daily. We should meditate on it, reflect upon it. We should keep it in our hearts. And once again, we can use individual parts. Love is patient. Okay, if that's my problem, if that's where my temptation lies, then remind myself that love is patient. You can use those words. Let's say my issue is pride or jealousy. You know, love is not jealous or boastful. We can take parts. You don't have to carry the whole thing with you, but realize the more familiar we are with it, then we can take those pieces, those parts that we need when we're being tempted or challenged not to love in one way or another, and that's what sin is. We can look at what love is and choose that instead. Like I said, we want to get off that highway towards that particular temptation and sin. And so we need to have something that we can hit the brakes with. And so prayers, psalms, holy words, phrases, quotes from Scripture, those things can hit the brakes. We can stop ourselves from going any further down that road. Create a list or journal of thoughts, prayers, songs, words to use when you're feeling tempted. Basically, you want to have a
bunch of ammunition with you so that when you start feeling tempted in one way or another, whether big or small, you have a response, you have an answer, you have something that you can do to stop. And so, have those prayers, have songs you can hum or sing. Think about the reasons why you don't want to do that particular sin. You need to have that at hand. That's why we have to do this ahead of time. We can't wait until the moment of temptation because then it's too late. We don't have time to figure it out. So before we get to the temptation, we need to know what we're going to do, how we're going to respond, what we're going to say, what we're going to do, how we're going to get off that highway and get onto a different road. How do we turn that superhighway toward the sin into a dirt trail and turn the good things that we're trying to do from a dirt trail to a superhighway? Also, if you fall, don't give up. Learn from the experience and adjust your strategy. Change is not going to be easy. And the reality is that temptation is out there. And yes, we sometimes do fall. And if it happens, make that a part of your ammunition. Realize, how do I feel after I sin? What were the results? What's the guilt, the shame, the pain, the sorrow, whatever it is. Take that and make that your new ammunition. If any of you were kids and put your hand on a hot stove, you did it once. After you got burned, you knew not to put your hand on the hot stove. Well, if we get burned by sin, and we do every time, it promises something it never delivers. And so when we get burned, let us remember it. Let us make that part of our ammunition as why we do not want to do it again in the future. And so even if you fall, don't stop trying. Keep working at this. Make that adjustment in your strategy. Say, okay, my answers weren't enough, and so I need to adjust those answers. What were the reasons why I shouldn't sin? How did I get burned by that sin? What were the repercussions? Because like I said, in the moment of a temptation, we never think about the repercussions. We just think about what we want at the moment. What's the repercussion? How did it hurt me? How did it hurt my relationship with God? How did it affect my relationship with others? If we know those things, and we remind ourselves of those things, that can help us not commit the sin again in the future. As I said, what we want to do is we want to take those bad habits and create new habits, good habits. We want to go from that superhighway towards the sin, turn it into a dirt trail. We want to take the dirt trail of a new hobby and make that the superhighway. And so in order to do that, think about things like hobbies, new hobbies, old hobbies that you haven't done in a long time, whatever. But those hobbies can give us something to do other than what it is we're tempted that is wrong. We can find ourselves another road to be on. And as we create new hobbies or new activities in our lives, we're filling it with good things and eliminating the bad things. And one of the things about, if you can, if it's possible, learn something new that really activates the brain in a way that occupies the brain, because the brain is trying to understand this new material, this new thing that it doesn't know, and it's filling in all these gaps and occupying its the little gears in your head going, and that distracts you away from the things that are bad. Because it's going to take a lot of energy, it's going to take a lot of focus to learn something new. And so learning something new is a great way in which we can avoid sin. Okay? Friendships. Friendship is so important. I mean, think about this. How many sins would you avoid just because you have a friend with you? I mean, the reality that you wouldn't want to do certain things in front of your friend. And so friendship, good friendship, not the kind of friendships that lead you astray and down the dirt road, down the superhighway towards sin, but good friends with good values, good character. You have those kind of friends that want to truly love you and you want to truly love them, then you're going to keep each other from sin. That's the beauty of friendship, is that with good friends, You keep yourselves in what is good and stay away from what is bad. And so friendship, very, very important in arming yourself against temptation and sin. Use your time wisely. Prepare, train, and keep developing new skills and habits. This isn't a one-time thing. You don't just say, okay, I went to the workshop and I heard what Father said and then I'm done. No, this is something that we have to work into our day-to-day life. We have to realize that we're going to be confronted by temptation. And there are certain sins that we are drawn to. And so if that's the case, we need to keep working, keep training, keep developing ourselves spiritually and protecting ourselves with all that ammunition so that we can stop ourselves from going down that road. Okay? What is on your mind? It matters. I mean, think about this. How much time is spent in secular music and media? You know, watching TV, listening to the radio, all this kind of stuff. And how much of that stuff is truly uplifting, giving glory to God, or embracing true good values? I mean, the reality is there's a lot of stuff that doesn't represent anything that is good out there that we're consuming all the time. Because it's a part of our culture. It's on our phones, it's on our computers, it's on the TV, you know, movies, music, everywhere around us. But think about that. What's filling your mind? Okay? You know, do you have things that are spiritually uplifting and good? You know, as far as your choice of music, choice of entertainment. It's important because what's filling your mind, that's where, you know, it's going to create those patterns. It says, oh, I like this, I'm going to go start doing these things and stuff. And when we get caught in those patterns, boom, all of a sudden we know we've got a sinful habit. Okay? So, what are we filling our minds with? And another important thing is that, you know, it's great to have, good Christian music or songs like that and stuff that, you know, that can fill our minds with the Word of God, the praise of God, and all those kind of things. So it's helpful to have that. You should have at least a few songs on your iPad or iPod or whatever they call them, and your phones. And also very important, okay, simple songs. Songs like Day by Day from Godspell, Were You There, Awesome God. These are songs that there's not a lot of lyrics to them, and they're very simple. And as soon as you hear it, boom, those words are bouncing in your head. It's like a jingle. It's like those commercials that, once you hear it, you're singing that little song all day long. Well, isn't that great? If you could have a few of those songs ready to go, you start feeling like, oh, this is the day I'm feeling like I'm going to get tempted for something. Pop one of those songs in, listen to it. Oh, good. Now this song is in my mind. I can't get rid of it. Well, that would be great. To have that song, those words, to be humming day by day all the day long, versus going down a highway towards a sin. And so use what we have available. There's all these kind of tools, all these kind of things that we can use to put our mind on what is right and take it away from what is wrong. Okay? Oh, I'm sorry. And sacred images. Okay? Sacred images. I mean, there's so much beautiful sacred art out there. And so much of it can fill our minds with the right thoughts, right image. Whether it's think about, Christmas time, we see all these different versions of the nativity scene. They're beautiful, they're striking, they, remind us of the love of God. We also have, like the images that are used for the Stations of the Cross, where we remind ourselves of the Passion of Christ. There's all these different kinds of sacred images that can strengthen us. Because if we put that in our minds, and we think about those things, it can help us stop. Stop thinking about what's going to lead us away from God. Stop thinking about the things that don't lead us to true love, to perfect love. That's what we have to do. We have to change our mind, the way we think, what we think. We need to allow ourselves to think what is right and what is good, moving towards God, love, and away from the things that are wrong, sinful, harmful, damaging. And so, use these tools. Arm yourself. Have the ammunition ready. Because yes, temptation will come at some point. We have to be ready for it. Okay. Remember the psychology. Talked about this just a little bit ago, and how the pharmacy in our head, that chemistry, the brain is going to give us certain things, feel-good chemicals, depending on what we do. And the brain doesn't decide whether it's good or bad. It's just responds to certain activities. And so while that can lead us into strengthening our desire for a particular sin, because we get caught up in a bad habit, and the brain is feeding that, well, we can use it to our advantage as well. So dopamine, we said, was a reward. We get that feel-good from accomplishing things. Well, that's what I said. Set small goals and achievements. Guess what? If the goal is just to get through the day, or just to get through, let's say, a phone call, okay? You say, oh, I'm going to talk to so-and-so, but whenever we get to talking, I find myself gossiping and saying things that I don't want to say. Well, then maybe that goal is, let me get through this phone call without doing that. You prepare yourself, you arm yourself, you got the ammunition to remind yourself why you shouldn't be doing that. And you say, I just need to get through this 15-minute phone call without getting into the conversation I'm going to regret. Guess what? You do it, you're going to get some dopamine. The brain's going to be happy. You say, hey, you accomplished it. You made it through that phone call, you didn't fall once. And so we can get the chemistry for doing the right thing. It doesn't only have to feed towards the wrong things and reinforce bad habits. It can reinforce good habits. Serotonin, self-esteem. Same thing. The discipline through our training. By doing these steps and developing and strengthening yourself against sin, where you don't feel bad about yourself because, like, oh goodness, I've fallen again. Once again, I made that same sin and I didn't want to do it. So instead of having those feelings, each day you make without going into those sins, you're building that self-esteem. And guess what? You get the reward. Serotonin is going to be pumping through your blood. And you can say, wow, I feel better about myself. Okay? Bonding relationships. Don't do it alone. Friends matter. Real love and commitment. Just like I said a moment ago. Friendship. Friendship is an important tool protecting ourselves from doing the wrong thing. By having good, solid friends that we truly love and they love us, allows us to do the right thing. And guess what? That's also going to give us some of these chemicals, because it's bonding, it's relationship. And the body, brain responds to it in a positive way. You're going to feel good about you, you're going to feel good about your friendships and your relationships. So instead of seeking out mindless and meaningless intimacies through sexual activity, you're going to have a true bonding, a true relationship. And so not just friends, because also this is with spouses, and brothers and sisters, all the relationships we have to have good, solid, real relationships based in love, not in just some type of physical attraction or physical activity. Endorphins. We can get this through healthy activities, things like exercise, deep breathing, sitting in the sunlight, okay? Can feed us, refresh us, release stress. All those kind of things can give us those endorphins, okay? And adrenaline, that's that pure energy, that fight-flight thing. Well, instead of doing risky behaviors that are dangerous, whether it's physical danger or whether it's a spiritual danger, do something that will challenge you, okay? Try something new, a ministry outside your comfort zone. Consider doing something that you've never done before, that oh wow, I'm not sure if I'm ready to do this. That'll give you adrenaline, okay? If you have to stand in front of a big group of people and explain something that you're not so familiar with, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? You'll get some adrenaline, trust me, okay? And so, there's ways to get all of these chemicals that our body and our brain are ready to produce through good and positive ways. And we can use that to our advantage. Just like the building new habits. The brain likes patterns, okay? And so we can get patterned in a bad habit, okay, moving us more and more towards sinful activity, or we can create good habits that lead us towards virtuous activities, being good and virtuous people. And the brain will support it. It'll give you all those same chemicals for doing the right thing. And so we can use our human physiology or psychology to our advantage in trying to overcome temptation and sin. We don't have to get trapped in a cycle, because we can break that. The same thing that creates that cycle that we might find ourselves repeating over and over again, I keep doing the same darn thing and stuff, Well, the same things that go into that can go into doing something positive, something good, something that takes us away from sin and doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is loving God and loving one another. Some general tips. Take one sin at a time, don't lump them together, okay? When it comes to this strategy. Now, there are certain things that are going to be universal across all, okay? One of the reasons why you shouldn't do any of the sins is because they're sins, okay? Very simple. So there is going to be some overlap in that sense, but when it comes to your individual strategy, your individual reasons not to do, individual reasons why you want to stop, individual excuses, what are your answers to those, it needs to be sin by sin. Because each sin is specific. You can't just say, I'm going to lump all the sins that I do into one big bag and I'm going to prepare myself for it. No. You have to individually be ready to answer the questions that's going to come to you. Why should you not do this? What are your excuses? Why do you say that it's okay at this particular moment? What are the rationalizations? You need to know what those things are so you can counter them directly. You can have an actual answer to whatever rationalization your brain wants to come up, what excuse it wants to come up with. So you have to look at each sin that you're trying to overcome individually, okay? Now, there are certain things that you do collectively. So your prayers, those short, quick prayer responses that I talked about, the songs, yeah, that can be used universally across the board with all your sins, but you have to have some direct, focused answers to the particular temptations. You have to have an individual strategy for each one, okay? Because if you lump them all together, then you're not going to have the right answer at the right moment. You know, when it comes to that whole little dialogue, we saw it in the video, kind of went back and forth for a little while, but at some point, in the video, it's like, oh, well, I don't have another answer, so now I'm going to go do the sin, okay? It has to be ready, individually, don't lump them, okay? Don't do this alone. When you go to confession, the priest is able to give some guidance and advice, and that's great. And you can work with the priest. You can tell him, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm working against this sin, but I fell, and seek that advice. Okay, but in confession, it's limited. There's usually not as much time. So potentially get a spiritual director. Okay, spiritual direction is great for something like this because usually spiritual direction, a session is going to be 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. So you have a lot more time to try to crack things open and get, right into the meat of it and be able to say, this is where I succeeded, this is where I'm falling short, and you can work together with a spiritual director to say, okay, here's the path out of this particular situation that I'm in. Okay. And spouses, friends, once again, if we love each other, we have loving relationships, okay, husbands to wives or person to person in friendship, if someone reveals to you and says, well, I've got this problem, I've got this sin, this temptation, it really gets its hooks in me and I find myself doing it and I hate doing it, but I'm kind of trapped in it and stuff. Well, this is not a time to pick up a rock and start throwing stones. This is a time to respond in love and mercy, and say, okay, I'll help you with this. Like I said, think about how many sins you could avoid just because you have someone else with you, supporting you, loving you, caring for you. That reality is real. We can keep each other safe in friendship. How many would you do the wrong thing in front of your spouse, in front of your friend? And that can help us. And so don't do it alone, okay? This takes time. You will grow in your ability to change your mind over time. I keep saying, we have to train, we have to practice. This needs to become a part of our daily prayer life. As we come and think about what are my excuses, what are my temptations, what are the things that I'm going to be challenged with, and how am I going to respond? What are going to be my answers? What's my ammunition? How do I take on this? How do I stop on that highway and get on a different road? Okay? So we do these things, as we do it, we're going to get better at it. Okay? And so, like I said, we're going to take that dirt road that we might be on right now, we're going to turn that into a super highway. Eventually our brain is going to want to do these things automatically. We're not going to have to think about it. We're not going to have to struggle as much about it, because you're going to develop a pattern of behavior that says every time I get this temptation, boom, these are the things that I'm doing. And then all of a sudden it kind of falls all into place. The brain says, oh, this is the pattern. This is what we want to do. This is the road that we want to go on. We don't want to go on that road. It's turning into a dirt road. We want to stay on our new superhighway that's beautiful and wonderful and takes us to the place where we want to be. Okay? So it takes time, but with time we'll grow in it and we'll get better at it and get better at it. Also, it's okay to reward yourself for small victories. Okay? You know, you get through that phone call. You get through the day. Okay? You get through the trip or whatever it is. You realize that, okay, this is going to be a challenge for me. You get through that, you know, whatever it is. It's okay to give yourself a little reward. You know, do something, you know, give yourself a piece of candy, give yourself, a nice dinner or whatever. But, you know, it's okay to reward yourself to say, hey, you know, I've accomplished something. I actually did what was hard, you know. And it's okay to give yourself some rewards for that. You know, I mean, like I said, the brain chemistry is going to do some of that. It's going to give you rewards for achieving, for accomplishing what you're hoping to do, and all those kind of things. But, you know, you can give yourself an actual reward, a little attaboy for yourself. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? If it strengthens and encourages some good behavior, do it, okay? This requires daily training. You need to practice it if you want to be ready. You will need to grow in your love for God. Spend time in adoration, receiving communion, confession. If you're going to give something up you want, even if it's sinful, you will need to do it for love. This is so important. You know, I said that sometimes it's painful not to sin. You know, it can hurt. You can say, I really need this. My whole body aches because I really want whatever it is. And so, yeah, it can hurt. And so, it can be difficult. It can be hard. It can be challenging. And so we need to nurture our love for God, that connection, that relationship, that understanding of God's personal love for me. Because when it's hard, that's when we need to know why we're doing it. We're doing it for love. We want to love God the same way He loves us. And so, yes, just like God sacrificed Himself on the cross for His love for us, I can sacrifice for my love for Him. That's what we have to be able to do. And so, take time in adoration. Come to church. Be in the presence of God. Receive communion. That communion, being united to Christ Himself. When we fall, go to confession. Seek the guidance and advice of the priest. Work towards not sinning again. That firm purpose of not sinning again. These things will strengthen our love for God. And in that love, we will be able to say no to whatever it is that we're being tempted to, and yes to God. Also, we can live without sin and be happy. The way sin enters into our lives and the way the temptations come to us, the reality is there's going to be a part of us that says, if I don't have this, I can't be happy. This is a part of me. This is a part of my life. This is something I do. I've been doing it years, whatever it might be. It's part of my identity. I've always done this. You might think, I can't be without this sin. But that's wrong. There's no such thing as a harmless sin. All sin damages. Either damages our relationship with God, with others, or even with ourselves. Someone's always getting hurt through the sins that we do. No matter how small we think they are, no matter how, it's just a part of me, whatever. No. Sin is bad. Sin hurts, brings suffering, pain, and sorrow into the world. It prevents us from having the real relationships that we need to have, which is truly loving, perfect relationships of love. That's what we're called to. We're called to love like God. That's a perfect love. Not a kind of part-time love, partial love, a little bit of this, but I want to get something out of it. No, it's a real love. And in that, we can't sin. If we want to truly learn to love perfectly, we have to stop sinning. And guess what? If we do, we'll be happy because we'll be loving the right way. we'll find real happiness in real love. Not just for pleasure, not just a moment of feeling good or whatever and stuff. No, real, permanent, eternal love. Love that flows for all eternity. The love of God, the love of heaven. That's the love we want to be a part of. And so yes, if you stop sinning, you can be happy because you'll be loving. Every time you can change your mind about a sin, it will strengthen you and you will eventually gain mastery over it. The more we do this, the better we get. We learn and understand that I can be tempted and I have a way not to fall. I have an answer to those temptations. I have a way to get off that road and onto a new one. I have someplace else to be, something else to do, someone else to be with, versus whatever that sin is. And the more we do it, the better we get at it. And so, realize that we can truly change our mind about sin. However sin or temptations have entered into our lives, however we might feel trapped in a cycle, however many pet sins we might think we have, or habitual sins we have, or sins of passions, of anger, pride, whatever, our appetites are too strong, we feel like, oh my goodness, I really just, my desires for these things are so great, I can't do anything about it, I just have to do them. Now, we can always change our mind. We can change our mind to take us away from the things that distract us from God, things that disrupt the relationship with us and others and God, to the things of God. We can change our mind to walk away from what is wrong and to what is right. We can change our mind from sin to love. And so, I hope that this will help you all. I hope these videos will help anyone who's watching them to know that there is a way to change your mind about sin.